Welcome to the Executive Espresso podcast, a sharp and to-the-point leadership podcast with insights from some of Australia's top executives. In today's episode, I'm back in Sydney, where I'm joined by Chris Linde, Group Chief Compliance Officer at the National Australian Bank. With a career spanning 3 continents and having worked with multinational powerhouses Deloitte and Deutsche Bank, Chris has a track record of transforming compliance into a competitive advantage. Enjoy the conversation around what it takes to stay ahead in a rapidly evolving financial world. Chris, welcome to the Executive Espresso. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks, Verge. Thanks for having me.
I was looking through your profile, and you have worked for some incredible names, big global names, from investment banking through to professional services, and now obviously at NAB. How have you become so successful over the years?
I appreciate the compliment, but I don't know if I would consider it success, and more as in right place, right time, with a bit of luck. Yeah. I think all the roles that I've had have come up in parts in my life or times in my life where I was looking for the next thing, or the next thing was just looking for somebody that I had the skills for at that time. And that made it a lot easier to make those moves. I think now that I've been in this role for almost 7 years now, opportunities present less as you get older. So I was lucky in my youth, after leaving South Africa and moving to London and wanting to see the world and work in a profession that allowed me to see the world, to just get those opportunities as they came. And I was pretty confident in my abilities to be able to assimilate to new cultures and new countries. Now that I look back on those times, I'm probably a little bit too confident. And there was quite a lot of change in some of those countries that I'd lived in. But now in hindsight, I've enjoyed every minute of it, but it's been luck.
I suppose there's a lot of people who say you've got to look for the luck, right? It's like the more you practice, the luckier you get, right? Like with golf or sports analogy. Would you call yourself a pretty driven and motivated person, especially in those younger years?
100%. Yeah. I've always known what I needed to do or wanted to do at certain times of my life. Like even from university or even at school, I always knew I wanted to be a chartered accountant by profession. And I knew I wanted to be a chartered accountant because I knew it gave me the variety to choose something later in life that maybe I enjoyed more. And, at university, our professors often used to push down on that point around accounting opening many doors. I think a stat, when I was in my final year in university, one of my professors telling us that on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, 70% of company directors were chartered accountants by profession. Wow. So that sort of underpinned why I chose that as a profession. Then when I was at university, we had South Africa finally came out of sanctions. We were able to travel overseas. And I was one of the first of that generation who could work and live overseas. So the day I finished my training contract with PwC in Johannesburg, I was on a plane, literally on the day that I got my piece of paper. I got on a plane and moved to London.
Yeah. When you were moving around to the different countries and looking at different opportunities with various different roles, did you have someone that you leaned on, or a few people you leaned on in terms of mentors or family or professionals that you knew, just to kind of, soundboard or talk about what those potential opportunities could look like?
Definitely. I had two who still remain my mentors to this day. The first was my older brother, who is a professional lawyer, had his own practice.
It's handy to have.
It was handy to have. And then the other one was my very first partner who employed me in London at Ernst & Young when I first moved there. And he did something for me that I love to tell the story because I think it really sets out who he is as an individual, and which is why he's still a mentor of mine. And that is when I was at university in South Africa in the late 90s, I had a student loan to pay for my education. Interest rates were about 23 or 24% that I was paying.
Just above what we're paying now, yeah.
Very close to. And when I moved to London, I wasn't earning that much. I was a first year out of my training contract. And the team was very small. There was about 30 of us in the team, and we used to travel and work a lot together as a team globally. And when we were in London, every Friday afternoon, we would go to the local and have a few beers, and I would stay for one and sort of leave. And after about a month, or about 4 or 5 times that this happened, this partner, David is his name, and he called me into his office on a Monday morning, and he said, we noticed that you leave after, one beer. And he said, why? And I said, because I grew up in an environment where you buy rounds. So your shot, my shot. And I could only afford one round because I had no money to buy rounds. And he asked me why. And I told him because I was pretty much sending a third of my salary back to South Africa to pay back my student loan. And he reached into the top drawer of his desk and wrote me a check for the full value of the loan. He said, there's no pressure on when you have to pay for it. When you've earned enough money and you're ready to pay it off, you can. And that kind of showed me the human side of, the accounting profession and him as a partner. And so because he was that open and trusting of me, I've kind of leaned on him a lot through my career.
David sounds like the type of people leader that most of us want, right? That human element, besides the fact that he wrote you a large check, but it's that human element that comes with being a people leader. Over the years now that you've managed various different diverse groups of people across professional services and banking and in between, what for you stands out as characteristics of a very good and authentic people leader?
I think you have to have a very high EQ to be a good people leader, and you have to be yourself. I think that the best leaders I've ever had have been really authentic and caring. And we can all be really good managers of people, or you can learn to be a good manager, and you can learn the skills on how to adapt to different situations. But who you are as an individual is, for me, probably the most important thing. I think if you met anybody that I knew when I was at school and they met me now, they would probably tell you that I'm exactly the same as I was 18 years ago. And I think, not that I'm saying I'm a great leader, but that being the same all the time, whether in a professional environment or in a in a personal situation. So I tend to have, as most probably leaders would say, an open door policy, but it's a lot more than that. I want that door to be both ways. So I want my people to feel like they are equals in the way in that we work and communicate with each other, so that we can discuss issues on a one-on-one basis in a relaxed environment. One of the things, certainly in my current role, and probably my last few roles, is I deal with a lot of issues, or was helping clients with issues that they had. And there's no better way to get to know somebody when they've got their backs to the wall, and for them to know you when you've got your back to the wall. So for me and my team, it's very important that having that sort of personal, one-on-one, relaxed attitude, I think makes for a really successful partnership in how you work with people.
There's a certain politician at the moment globally who's, for good or bad, challenging the status quo of what leadership is, right? For you though, again, you've been across very diverse teams over the years. How do you go about in a very changing, ever-changing landscape of leadership and what's a good leader? How do you go about building high-performing teams when we feel like things are changing so quickly and so often?
I think it's easy for me because I am not the smartest person in the room, and in this conversation, I'm clearly not as well. And that's how I present myself to most people. So I think I have, and it's not deliberate, I think I have this disarming kind of way that I work and with people, where they don't, I want them to feel like they're better than me. And in most cases, that's relatively easy to do. Occasionally, I might get one up on somebody, but that's probably more at home with one of my kids, although they'd probably say the opposite.
That might be changing as
well.
But
I think, exactly, I think that's really key for how I create a great team environment. I want my people to feel like that they know more than me, and that they have the confidence to be able to articulate whatever it is that's on their mind in a way that I'm not going to go, well, that's not a great idea. Occasionally I might say that, but then that might put them on the footing where they go, but actually, I think you're wrong. And then there's a dialogue around that. Turns out probably 99 times out of 100 that I am wrong. But having that ability for people to even second guess if I say otherwise. So I think the way in which I like to lead people is letting them think, or letting them know that probably they're leading me, and that I'm probably learning more from them than they are from me. I've got a lot of life experience, and I've got a lot of experience in handling a bunch of situations. But ultimately, working comes down to this conversation, or who you've sent an email to, how you write it, what you really want from them. And you've probably heard this many times in holding conversations with a number of people. And there's no better way to get something out of somebody by being the lesser man. And I know that's probably not the right English phrase to use, but just being a little bit more humble than possibly what my title might allow me to have. And I want my people and people that I work with, be it a peer or even be it somebody more senior than me, or a lot junior than me, to feel that way.
You've spoken a lot about teams and about the teams that you've worked for and managed over the years. Are there any traits or characteristics that you look for in those teams outside of the technical side of things?
That's a really good question. So at the moment, we've got a few roles that we're looking for in our team. And usually by the time they come to me, they've gone through a screening process. And so their skills and experiences there. When I meet somebody, I want to know who they are. And I used to have this technique of interviewing candidates, which I was told once by one of my HR teams in a previous organization not to use, so I stopped using it. But it served me well, I thought, for a long period of time. And it was this: there were 3 questions that I used to ask. So I would set the interviewer up by saying, look, you've come through the process, you've definitely got the skills, I've read through your CV. I said, but I want to get to know you a little bit better. And so the 3 questions are, first one is, what would your friends say about you? And what would what are the sorts of, if somebody had to describe you, how would they describe you? And then they'd give me that answer. And then I'd say, well, if it was a female friend or a male friend, would they have a different view on what you've just described?
Interesting. Yeah.
And then they would give me their answer. And then the last question is, okay, well, let's call one of your friends and let's verify what you've said. Now, I was never going to call anybody. What I was looking for was the reaction to the last question.
Wow. Okay.
And because most people would, sort of be a little bit uncomfortable or whatever, because either they might have embellished a little bit, which often is not the case, but, that uncomfortable tension between me and them, I'm interested to see how they cope with it. Fantastic. And the reason for that is you know the true person when things are going wrong. And you know the true character of an individual when things are not going the way that they want them to. And so I hired people on the spot based on how they responded to that, because how they felt comfortable telling me who they were, how confident they were in explaining what people thought about them, and how they responded to a question that probably they've never heard anybody ask them before, let alone being in a professional interview, really tells me a lot about their character. And as you've heard me say, a lot of my career has been helping clients or businesses facing complex issues. And so the people that I want around me are people who can step into those environments and handle the pressure that comes with actually taking on somebody else's issues.
Where do all the big ideas come from? Where do you get your creative thinking from?
My team are going to roll their eyes when they see this. Usually very early in the morning. So I'm usually up pretty early, around 5 o'clock. No, not because I read the book, but just because I'm
not the 5 a.m.
insomniac.
club.
No. So very early in the morning, if I cycle to work, while I'm cycling to work, hardly ever at work, because I've always got something on or I'm doing something. Things come to me in the moment, yes, as we're working as normally, but usually creative ideas around strategic ways of working or direction of the team, which way to go in investigation, who to interview next, that stuff comes to me outside of work. And my mind is always going and always has, but usually early in the morning or having a shower or, brushing my teeth before work, I will have, I call it an epiphany, but people in my team would call it another knee-jerk reaction about thinking about things completely differently.
Where do you find the time to do anything else though? You mentioned, your mind's always going. There's only so many hours in the day. You've got a team to look after. You've got a family to look after. You've got colleagues, meetings, back-to-backs. Where do you find the time?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I suppose, like most people, I wish I had more time to do different things and to do things that, through various stages of my life were important to me. I don't find myself not having time to do the things I like. I probably wish that I had more time to do more of the things that I like. Like, for example, if I was going on a vacation, instead of 2 weeks, it'd be great to have 3 weeks, but not the end of the world if I don't. I wish I had more time to do probably some of my personal hobbies, which you can't just pick up and do within 10, 15 minutes. You need a couple of hours to sit down. I wish I had more time to do that. I wish the leaves didn't fall from the trees as much as they do around my house, which takes about 3 or 4 hours off my Saturday morning.
Very good.
If my wife watches this, she'll probably say yes, but it's only once a month, but it's still, it's a long time. I do make time for things that are important for me.
Okay.
That I do. So if I can feel myself getting probably a little bit too involved in work or probably overthinking something, which I tend to do quite a lot of, I will always take a step back, or I might come in late for work one day and I'll go and sit in a coffee shop down the road and just sort of read the newspaper and try and distance myself from that. But I don't find myself thinking, oh, I wish I could have, or I wish I had more time to do this. If I ever get to that point, I won't say that never happens, but if I ever get to that point, I'm quite good at self-reflecting. And my wife is actually really good at calling it out. She can sense it in me.
It's a good partnership.
So she will say, look, go and take the dog for a walk, or usually to get out of her hair, which I don't blame her. But there are certain situations where I just sometimes need to take myself aside and sort of reconnect with, and making sure that I'm focusing on the right things.
Yeah. This self-reflection piece that you mentioned, is that something that comes naturally to you, or is it something that you've learned over the years?
And I've had to learn it.
Yeah.
So I think I've been, I was growing up, I was very shy, and I suppose even now I'm pretty shy, and so I've almost learned to overcome it by being overt, or maybe probably coming across as overconfident. But within me, there's always been that sense of shyness. So, in answering your question, I have learned to overcome things as I've needed to at different times in my life. I suppose we all have, right? I'm old enough now to and thankfully still have the memory to think back in times of my life where I've had to course correct on certain things, particularly the way that I think about things. The things that we used to think and do in the late 80s, early 90s are worlds apart from where they are now. I see the way that my kids are growing up, and it's vastly different from the way that I grew up. And so coupled with that, we ourselves and the way that we think have had to change over time. And probably the one thing that I learned the most was in the moment feedback. And we never do it because we never have time to, for one, and we're always running between meetings, and we never really take back and go, should I have said that different? Or, apart from self-reflection, what do other people think? Asking somebody at the end of a conversation, did you get something out of that? Or was this a good use of your hour? Or could we have done something differently?
I like to always ask my guests if they could sit at a table with anybody, both past and present, and have a bite to eat with them, who would it be?
Wow. I think my dad would be one. So my dad passed away when I first moved to London, 2000, so quite a young age. And because I think I would have loved to have spoken to him as an adult, because I think he would have had some great life experience that I had to learn over time for myself. But I think having my dad, who grew up as a farm boy, worked in construction, was an entrepreneur at heart, had multiple businesses, failed many times, started again, just that life experience on being a human being and what that can teach you. I'd have loved to have sucked some of that up. Plus, I would have liked to have heard him say once or twice again in my life that I should chew with my mouth closed and put my knife and fork down in between mouthfuls.
Mm-hmm. For any up-and-coming people leaders, right? Because I like to distinguish between, you've got market leaders, who are the ones who are very, very good at what they do, but it's quite individualistic, and they just want to stay in their lane and do that thing very well. And you've got the people leaders who want to go on and lead people and manage people and see the success of people. So for any up-and-coming people leaders out there who are looking to take that next step in their own leadership journey, what sort of advice would you give them on what to focus on and what to focus less on?
Yeah, I think I read the day that my daughter showed me Instagram Reels, because I'm slightly addicted to them in some shape or form. But I was watching a reel a few months ago where I think it was Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. No, it definitely wasn't Elon Musk. I think it was Steve Jobs said something to a room full of people, which is listen more and speak less. And it's obvious, right? Now that when I saw it, I just went, now that we're having this conversation, I probably am doing the opposite of what I heard. But I think that is the best advice I would give to any people leader, because if you listen more and you actually have less to say, the other person is going to, all the stuff I told you about being comfortable and putting people under pressure to do, that one concept could be life-changing for any people leader. Very difficult to implement, because naturally, as people leaders or any market leaders, you say, your instinct is to almost command and control.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you just implemented that one trait, it would be game changing. I still struggle with it, I have to admit. I try and do it a lot, but more and more, but I really struggle with it. Maybe I should try and do it at home first and see if that helps, and then bring those learnings to work. Yes. But if I had to give some advice to my younger self, that would be the first thing that I would say.
Brilliant. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show. And I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for listening. If you've enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to like and subscribe. You don't want to miss the next few episodes.